Ladies and gentlemen, in the intricate dance of relationships, one of the most perplexing and emotionally charged questions often arises. Why would a man who says he loves you, who claims to care deeply for you, seem to ignore you? It's a question that gnaws at the heart and rattles the mind. It's something that can leave you feeling abandoned, confused, and betrayed, wondering if you've misread everything you thought you knew about the relationship. You might begin to question yourself. What's wrong with you? Why are you not enough? This uncertainty is painful, and its depth often doesn't just affect the immediate relationship, but can leave a lasting mark on how you view relationships moving forward. But here's the reality you might not want to face. This is more common than you think. And it's not necessarily because something is wrong with you. It's not about your worth. It's not about your beauty. It's not about your intelligence or your kindness. What you may be dealing with is something much deeper and more complex. And it is the result of a man grappling with his own internal battles, his own contradictions, and his own fears. Fears that, if left unaddressed, manifest in ways that can leave you feeling ignored and emotionally sidelined. Now, let's not sugarcoat the truth. Being ignored by someone you love, someone who is supposed to care for you deeply, cuts. It's a sting that reverberates through your self-esteem, creating self-doubt, making you question your value and place in the world. You see, when someone loves you and yet distances themselves or shuts you out, it can feel like a cruel contradiction. On the surface, it seems impossible for love and rejection to coexist in the same space. And yet, this is precisely what happens to many people in relationships. Let me take you back to a moment in my life that will help illustrate the complexity of this situation. It was winter, a cold January evening. The air was crisp and the city streets glistened from a fresh snowfall. I was sitting at a small cafe, nursing a lukewarm cup of coffee, mindlessly flipping through a book, when she walked in. Her presence was unmistakable. She had that aura about her, the kind that immediately commands attention. We had been together for several years. Our relationship had been intense, passionate, full of ups and downs. But recently, there had been a noticeable shift. Conversations had become sparse, and when we did speak, it felt like she was physically present, but mentally and emotionally miles away. As she sat down across from me, her eyes were distant. I could see the weariness etched across her face. Her posture slumped, as if the weight of an invisible burden was too much to bear. And in that moment, I realized something. I had been ignoring her, not just physically, but emotionally. I had been wrapped up in my own internal struggles, my own doubts, fears, and insecurities. The love I had for her had not disappeared, but somewhere along the way, I had failed to recognize the signs of neglect. The truth was, I didn't know how to express the vulnerability I was feeling. It was easier to pull away, to retreat into myself. I thought I could handle it alone, and so I did what many men do when they feel overwhelmed. I shut down. I distanced myself, thinking that by withdrawing, I could protect her from the chaos inside me. But in doing so, I had only created more distance between us. It wasn't an intentional act of hurt, but an act of self-preservation that ultimately harmed the very person I was trying to protect. This is one of the core reasons why a man who loves you might ignore you. He doesn't do it to punish you. He does it because he is struggling with something much deeper within himself, something he cannot yet articulate or face. The irony is that the love he feels for you is often the very thing that drives him to retreat. You see, love is not always a clear and simple emotion. It is a complex, multifaceted force that can both heal and wound. It can inspire incredible acts of courage and compassion, but it can also lead to crippling self-doubt, anxiety, and fear. When a man feels overwhelmed by the depth of his emotions, or when he is confronted with the vulnerability that love demands, it's not uncommon for him to pull away. He may feel that he isn't good enough for you, that he doesn't have what it takes to make you happy, or that he is failing in some fundamental way. In these moments, what he really needs is not more pressure, not more questions, but space to process, to confront his own fears and insecurities. But here's the catch. This doesn't always happen. In fact, it often doesn't happen at all. Instead of taking the time to work through these emotions, he may retreat even further, bottling up his feelings, perhaps even unintentionally taking his love for you with him into that internal space where it can no longer reach you. Let me make this even clearer. Men, by nature, are often not taught how to communicate vulnerability effectively. They are conditioned to be stoic, to carry burdens silently, to shield themselves from what might be perceived as weakness. This isn't an excuse for ignoring the ones they love, but it is a reality that plays a significant role. Many men, especially those who deeply care about someone, fear the prospect of being seen as inadequate. There is a pressure, often self-imposed but nonetheless real, that they must be strong, resilient, and dependable. When they feel they are failing in these areas, they may retreat rather than face the truth. They may ignore you, not because they no longer love you, but because they don't want you to see them struggling. Here's where it gets more complicated. Often, these men don't even realize they're doing it. It's not a conscious decision to ignore you, it's a subconscious response to their inner turmoil. The act of withdrawing can be a defense mechanism, a way to protect both themselves and you from what they perceive as their inadequacies. But this isn't the only reason why a man might ignore you. There are layers to this issue, and understanding them requires stepping back and looking at the bigger picture of human behavior and relationships. The first thing we need to acknowledge is that relationships are inherently complex. They require balance, they require effort, they require a certain level of vulnerability and trust. It's easy to believe that love is enough, that simply being in love with someone should be enough to make everything work. But this is a naive perspective. Love, while beautiful and powerful, is not a cure-all. It does not automatically solve all of the deeper issues that individuals bring into a relationship. Many men carry deep emotional wounds from their past, wounds that have nothing to do with you. These wounds can be from childhood experiences, past relationships, societal expectations, or personal failures. They may not be consciously aware of these wounds, but they affect how they interact with you. When you love someone deeply, you become a mirror of their own vulnerabilities, and that can be both intoxicating and terrifying. For some men, being loved is as much a source of fear as it is of comfort. They may fear rejection. They may fear that the closer you get, the more likely it is that you will eventually see their flaws and leave. This fear can cause them to push you away, not because they don't love you, but because they're terrified of being hurt. They retreat into silence, thinking that if they withdraw first, they can protect themselves from the potential pain of losing. Then there's the question of how men process emotions. Many men were raised in environments where emotions were not openly discussed or acknowledged. They were told to man up, to handle things quietly, to suppress their feelings. This creates a pattern of emotional suppression that can be incredibly damaging in relationships. When faced with the vulnerability that love requires, some men might feel they have no outlet, no safe space in which to process and express their feelings. The result? Emotional withdrawal. Ignoring the person they love becomes the easiest way to avoid confronting what they cannot yet articulate or understand about themselves. This doesn't mean that the relationship is doomed. It means that there is work to be done on both sides. For you, understanding that a man's withdrawal may stem from deeper emotional issues rather than a lack of love or interest is crucial. For him, the path forward requires confronting those issues, acknowledging his vulnerability, and learning to express himself in healthier ways. But it's not easy. It's not easy for a man to admit that he feels lost, confused, or overwhelmed. It's not easy for him to ask for help or to show you his softer, more vulnerable side. And it's not easy for you either. It's painful to feel ignored, to feel as though your love isn't enough. It's painful to watch someone you care for retreat into themselves when all you want is to connect, to be there for them. But this struggle, this tension, is a natural part of the human experience. It's the conflict between vulnerability and self-preservation, between love and fear. So, when a man who loves you seems to ignore you, don't immediately jump to conclusions. Don't assume it's about you. Don't assume that you've done something wrong. Recognize that there might be something much deeper at play. Something he is struggling to understand, something he is too afraid to confront. This isn't a justification or neglect or emotional abandonment, but it's an invitation to consider the complexities of the situation. It's a reminder that love isn't always straightforward, and the ways in which people express love or fail to express it are shaped by their own histories, fears, and unresolved conflicts. Understanding this can help you navigate the uncertainty and confusion. It can also help you communicate more effectively, not just with him, but with yourself. If you find yourself in this situation, take a step back, examine the broader picture. Recognize that relationships require patience, understanding, and the willingness to face uncomfortable truths. You are not alone in this struggle. Everyone has moments of doubt, moments of withdrawal, moments of fear. The key is to recognize these moments for what they are and to use them as opportunities for growth and deeper connection. If you can do this, you'll find that love, the real transformative kind of love, can thrive even in the midst of confusion and pain. The complexity of human relationships is often underestimated, especially when it comes to understanding the motivations behind someone's actions. When someone you love starts to distance themselves or act indifferent, it's easy to take it personally, thinking that it signals the end of their feelings for you. But relationships are far more nuanced than a simple reflection of your worth or efforts. There are a multitude of internal and external factors at play that influence how people behave within these relationships. Emotions can be complicated, and love itself is no exception. Love can bring joy, connection, and a sense of purpose, but it can also bring vulnerability, insecurity, and fear. It is not always a straightforward path to happiness, and the reasons behind someone's actions may not always be clear. In many cases, when someone loves you but seems to ignore you, it's not because they no longer care. The disconnect usually stems from something deeper that the person has yet to face or understand. Emotions are often tangled with past experiences, fears, and self-doubt, which can surface unexpectedly. These internal struggles can lead someone to withdraw not because of a lack of affection, but because of their inability to deal with their own emotions or communicate their feelings effectively. If you can understand that, it becomes easier to navigate the confusion and distance. Recognizing the inherent complexity of relationships will help you avoid falling into the trap of self-blame or thinking that something is fundamentally wrong with you. The key here is awareness. Awareness that relationships don't operate on a simple, linear trajectory. There are bumps, detours, and forks in the road that people need to navigate. Even when one person is going through internal turmoil, the impact on the relationship can be significant. The person might act distant, not because they want to hurt you, but because they are overwhelmed by their own emotions and fears. Therefore, understanding that relationships are far more than what is visible on the surface is vital to maintaining a healthy perspective. The recognition that relationships are not just defined by external behaviors, but are deeply influenced by inner struggles, gives you the necessary insight to not take emotional withdrawal too personally. This realization allows you to avoid creating unnecessary emotional distance in your own heart. You don't need to lose yourself in wondering if it's you that's the problem. Instead, you can give space for the complexity of human emotions to play out. It opens up the opportunity for reflection, growth, and understanding within yourself and within the relationship. This broader view of relationships encourages patience and empathy. Instead of immediately seeking answers or pushing someone to explain their feelings, it allows you to approach the situation with more maturity and an open mind. It invites you to observe the deeper layers of the relationship with a balanced view. In doing so, you protect your emotional health while simultaneously offering the other person the space they may need to process their emotions without feeling burdened by your own doubts and insecurities. One of the key reasons why a man who loves you might ignore you is the fear of inadequacy. This fear is a silent but powerful force that often manifests when someone is overwhelmed by their emotions or feels they are not measuring up to the expectations of their partner or society. Men in particular may struggle with this fear more than they admit. From a young age, many men are conditioned to believe that their worth is tied to their ability to be strong, reliable, and successful. If they feel they are failing in any of these areas, the fear of inadequacy can become overwhelming, causing them to pull away from the person they love. The fear of inadequacy can be especially damaging because it is often tied to deeply ingrained beliefs about what it means to be enough in a relationship. When a man feels that he is not living up to these standards, whether in terms of providing, being emotionally present, or simply meeting the needs of his partner, he may withdraw in an attempt to protect both himself and his partner from the disappointment he feels. This withdrawal is not a reflection of his feelings toward you, but a response to his own internal struggle. He may feel that by retreating, he is sparing you from the pain of realizing that he is not as perfect as he thinks you deserve. For many men, their fear of being seen as inadequate can create a barrier to intimacy and emotional connection. Rather than confronting their vulnerabilities and admitting their perceived flaws, they may choose to hide behind emotional distance. This can create an unspoken tension in the relationship, as their partner may feel rejected or neglected without understanding the root cause of the behavior. The fear of inadequacy is a complex emotion that prevents them from opening up and sharing their true feelings, even though deep down they may crave connection. Overcoming the fear of inadequacy requires self-awareness and a willingness to face these deep-rooted insecurities. It involves unlearning the idea that one's worth is defined solely by their achievements, their successes, or their ability to provide. It's a process of understanding that love is not about perfection. It's about vulnerability, openness, and mutual support. If a man can learn to embrace his own flaws and accept that he doesn't have to be perfect in order to be loved, he can begin to break down the emotional walls that are keeping him from fully engaging in the relationship. In this context, it is important to approach a man's emotional withdrawal with compassion and understanding. Recognizing that his retreat may be rooted in fear of inadequacy allows you to avoid interpreting his behavior as a lack of love. Instead, you can see it as a sign that he is struggling with his own internal conflicts. By offering patience and creating a safe space for him to express his vulnerabilities, you can help him confront these fears and build a more open, authentic connection between you both. Another key factor in why a man who loves you might ignore you lies in the social conditioning many men experience, which discourages emotional expression. From a young age, many boys are taught to toughen up and to avoid showing vulnerability or weakness. They are encouraged to suppress their emotions and deal with problems quietly and independently. This conditioning can create a disconnect between how they feel and how they express those feelings. Over time, this pattern of emotional suppression can become ingrained, making it difficult for men to process their emotions in healthy ways. This social conditioning often leads men to avoid confronting difficult feelings. Instead of openly expressing fear, sadness, or anxiety, they may retreat inwardly, thinking that these emotions are signs of weakness or inadequacy. The fear of being seen as weak can make it incredibly challenging for a man to open up about his emotions, even to the person he loves. As a result, he may inadvertently ignore or distance himself from his partner rather than confront the underlying issues that are causing him emotional turmoil. For many men, the pressure to be strong, stoic, and self-reliant can be stifling. They may feel that expressing vulnerability is not only a personal failure, but also a betrayal of societal expectations. This can create a barrier to emotional intimacy as the person they love becomes a mirror for their fears and insecurities. Instead of feeling safe and supported, they may feel exposed and vulnerable, prompting them to withdraw and shut down emotionally. The challenge, then, is for men to break free from this conditioning and learn to embrace vulnerability as a source of strength rather than weakness. It's essential for them to understand that emotional expression is a natural and necessary part of being human, and that it's okay to ask for help, seek support, or simply share their feelings with the person they care about. This process requires patience, self-reflection, and a willingness to confront deep-seated beliefs that have shaped their behavior over the years. As a partner, it is crucial to approach these emotional barriers with understanding and compassion. Rather than pushing a man to open up or criticizing him for his emotional distance, it's important to create a safe space where he feels comfortable expressing himself without fear of judgment. Over time, this can help him learn that vulnerability is not a sign of weakness, but a powerful tool for creating deeper, more meaningful connections in relationships. One of the most primal fears that drive emotional withdrawal is the fear of rejection. When someone loves you, they are putting themselves in a vulnerable position, exposing their heart to the possibility of being hurt. For many men, the fear of rejection runs deep, especially if they have experienced it in the past, either through previous relationships or other significant life experiences. This fear can become so overwhelming that it manifests in a subtle but powerful way by withdrawing from the person they love. This fear of rejection is not always rational. In fact, it can often be rooted in past experiences, insecurities, or even imagined scenarios. The idea that someone they care about might eventually leave them or not love them in return is enough to drive them to emotionally distance themselves. The thought of rejection can become so terrifying that instead of confronting their feelings head-on, they choose to pull away. This avoidance is a defense mechanism, a way of shielding themselves from the emotional pain they fear is inevitable. It's important to recognize that this fear of rejection does not diminish their love for you. In fact, it often intensifies it. The more a man loves, the greater the fear of losing that love. This paradox is difficult to understand, but is a natural part of human emotional dynamics. When someone loves deeply, they risk vulnerability, and when they are vulnerable, they open themselves to the possibility of pain. The natural response for many is to withdraw before they can be hurt, even if it means causing emotional distance in the process. Overcoming this fear requires a shift in mindset. It involves understanding that rejection is not a reflection of personal worth, but a part of the human experience. Not every relationship will last, and not every person will remain in your life forever. But this does not mean that love is any less real or meaningful. By accepting the inevitability of emotional risks and embracing vulnerability, a man can break free from the cycle of fear that keeps him stuck in emotional. If you find yourself in a situation where a man you love is withdrawing because of his fear of rejection, it's essential to approach him with empathy. Recognize that his actions are driven by an internal struggle and not by a lack of affection. Offer reassurance, create a safe space for him to express his fears, and allow him to confront the vulnerability that comes with love. By doing so, you give him the chance to face his deepest fears and build a stronger, more open connection with you. Effective communication is the foundation of any healthy relationship. However, when it comes to dealing with complex emotions like fear, insecurity, or vulnerability, many men struggle to communicate their feelings. They may not know how to express what they are going through, or they may fear that their emotions will be misunderstood or dismissed. This inability to communicate effectively can lead to emotional withdrawal as they retreat into silence rather than confronting the issues at hand. Communication barriers are not just about what is said, they are also about what is left unsaid. In many cases, a man who loves you may not know how to articulate the reasons behind his emotional withdrawal. He may feel overwhelmed by his feelings, unsure of how to communicate the complexity of what's going on inside. As a result, he may pull away, thinking that silence is the best option. Unfortunately, this often has the opposite effect, leaving his partner confused, hurt, and unsure of where they stand in the relationship. This communication breakdown can create a cycle of frustration and misunderstanding. As the woman in the relationship, you may feel neglected, ignored, or unimportant. You may begin to question whether your partner still loves you or whether you are doing something wrong. But this feeling of being ignored is often a reflection of poor communication rather than a lack of love. The absence of communication can make it difficult to resolve conflicts, understand each other's needs, or address underlying issues in the relationship. Breaking through these communication barriers requires both parties to be patient and committed to understanding each other. For the man, it means learning how to express vulnerability and open up about his feelings, even when it feels uncomfortable or unfamiliar. For the woman, it means creating an environment where these conversations can happen without judgment or criticism. Open, honest communication is essential to breaking the cycle of emotional withdrawal and moving toward greater intimacy and connection. If you can both commit to improving communication in your relationship, you can create a foundation of trust and understanding. You will no longer be left guessing or assuming the worst about each other's feelings. Instead, you can address issues as they arise, ensuring that both parties feel heard, valued, and loved. Effective communication isn't just about solving problems. It's about building a deeper connection and fostering a sense of emotional safety in the relationship. Self-reflection is an essential component of emotional growth, both for individuals and for relationships. When a man who loves you begins to withdraw emotionally, it may be a sign that he is struggling with his own internal conflicts. In these moments, self-reflection is crucial for understanding the root causes of his behavior. Rather than simply reacting to the outward signs of emotional distance, it's important to take a step back and reflect on what might be happening beneath the surface. Self-reflection allows individuals to examine their own beliefs, fears, and past experiences. It encourages them to question why they are behaving in a certain way and whether their actions are a reflection of their deeper emotional needs or unresolved conflicts. By taking the time to reflect on their emotions, they can gain insight into the factors that are driving their behavior. This self-awareness is the first step toward breaking free from emotional withdrawal and learning how to navigate difficult emotions in healthier ways. In the context of relationships, self-reflection is not just about understanding one's own emotions, but also about understanding the impact those emotions have on the other person. When someone is emotionally distant or withdrawn, it's easy to focus on the hurt feelings and misunderstandings that arise from that behavior. However, self-reflection encourages individuals to think about the bigger picture, to consider the role that their own fears, insecurities, or unresolved issues might be playing in the situation. Through self-reflection, a man can begin to confront the issues that are causing him to withdraw. He may uncover fears of rejection, feelings of inadequacy, or deep-seated emotional wounds that he has been avoiding. By acknowledging these issues, he can start to work through them in a healthier way. It's not about eliminating these fears altogether, but about learning to manage them and communicate them more effectively. Self-reflection is a powerful tool for personal growth and for building healthier relationships. It allows individuals to gain clarity about their own emotions and to approach their relationships with greater emotional maturity. When both partners engage in self-reflection, they can create a dynamic of mutual growth, support, and understanding that strengthens their connection over time. Emotional support plays a crucial role in helping someone navigate the complexities of their inner world. When a man who loves you begins to withdraw, one of the most valuable things you can offer is emotional support. However, emotional support does not mean pressuring or demanding answers. It means offering a safe, non-judgmental space where he can process his emotions without fear of being criticized or misunderstood. Providing emotional support requires patience, empathy, and understanding. It means acknowledging that your partner is going through something difficult, even if you don't fully understand what it is. Instead of pushing him to open up, you can simply be there for him, offering your presence and your compassion. This support can help him feel less isolated in his struggles and may encourage him to open up when he's ready. Sometimes, emotional support also means allowing your partner the space he needs to process his feelings on his own. Pushing him to communicate before he is ready can backfire, causing him to retreat even further. Instead, give him the time he needs to reflect on his emotions. Offer gentle encouragement, but let him know that you are there for him whenever he's ready to talk. In some cases, emotional support might involve seeking external help, such as therapy or counseling. When someone is deeply struggling with their emotions, having a neutral third party to help navigate those feelings can be incredibly beneficial. This isn't a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength and a willingness to do the work necessary to grow, both individually and as a couple. The goal of offering emotional support is not to fix the situation, but to create a sense of emotional safety that allows both partners to confront their fears and insecurities together. By providing a compassionate and understanding environment, you create the foundation for healing and growth. This can help both you and your partner navigate the difficult moments in your relationship with greater resilience and understanding. Vulnerability is one of the most powerful forces in a relationship. It is the act of opening yourself up to someone else, allowing them to see your true self, flaws, fears, desires, and all. When a man loves you but pulls away, it is often because he is struggling with his own vulnerability. Vulnerability can be terrifying, particularly for those who have been taught to suppress their emotions or who have been hurt in the past. The fear of being vulnerable can create emotional walls that distance him from the person he cares about. The irony is that vulnerability is the very thing that can bring two people closer together. When both partners are able to be vulnerable with each other, it creates a deep emotional connection. It fosters trust and understanding, allowing each person to see the other for who they truly are. However, vulnerability requires courage. It requires the willingness to expose your innermost feelings and to trust that the other person will handle them with care and compassion. For many men, vulnerability feels like a risk they are not ready to take. They fear that if they expose their weaknesses or insecurities, they will be rejected or judged. This fear can prevent them from opening up to the person they love, causing them to retreat into emotional silence. Yet the very act of confronting these fears and allowing themselves to be vulnerable is the key to breaking free from emotional withdrawal. To cultivate vulnerability in a relationship, both partners must be willing to take risks. It requires creating a safe space where each person feels comfortable sharing their emotions without fear of judgment or criticism. When vulnerability is embraced, it allows both individuals to grow emotionally and to deepen their connection. It is a powerful tool for overcoming emotional barriers and for building a stronger, more resilient relationship. By embracing vulnerability, both partners can learn to navigate the complexities of their emotions together. Vulnerability fosters intimacy and creates an environment where love can thrive. It allows both individuals to be seen, heard, and understood in their truest form. And when both partners are willing to be vulnerable with each other, the emotional distance that once existed can be bridged, creating a deeper, more meaningful connection. Fear plays a significant role in why a man might ignore the woman he loves. Fear of emotional pain, fear of rejection, fear of failure. These are all natural human emotions, but they can have a profound impact on how a person behaves in a relationship. When someone is afraid of being hurt or rejected, they may pull away as a means of self-protection. Unfortunately, this can create emotional distance and make it harder to maintain a strong connection. Fear is not inherently a negative force. In fact, it is a survival mechanism designed to protect us from harm. However, when fear is left unchecked, it can hinder emotional intimacy and connection. In relationships, fear can manifest in various ways: avoiding difficult conversations, shutting down emotionally, or retreating inwardly. It can cause someone to hold back their feelings, afraid that expressing them will lead to rejection or conflict. Understanding the role of fear in a relationship allows both partners to approach emotional withdrawal with greater empathy. Instead of assuming that a partner's emotional distance is a sign of disinterest or rejection, you can view it as a signal that they are grappling with their own internal fears. This perspective opens up the possibility for deeper understanding and compassion rather than frustration or resentment. At the same time, it is important for both individuals to confront their fears head-on. Rather than allowing fear to control the relationship, it is essential to address it directly. This might mean having difficult conversations about past hurts, acknowledging insecurities, or seeking support in overcoming emotional barriers. When fear is addressed, it can no longer hold sway over the relationship, allowing both partners to connect on a deeper, more authentic level. By recognizing fear as a natural part of human relationships, you can cultivate an environment where both partners feel safe enough to confront their vulnerabilities. When fear no longer has control, the relationship can evolve into a space where both individuals can grow and connect without the limitations imposed by anxiety or insecurity. Healing in a relationship is an ongoing process that requires time, patience, and mutual effort. When a man who loves you is ignoring you, it can feel like the relationship is breaking down, but this does not necessarily have to be the case. Healing is possible if both partners are willing to confront the emotional barriers that are creating distance between them. The path to healing begins with self-awareness, emotional honesty, and the willingness to engage in open, vulnerable communication. The healing process is not always linear. It may involve setbacks, difficult conversations, and moments of emotional intensity. However, it is important to remember that healing is not about avoiding discomfort. It is about learning how to navigate it together. As both partners work through their own fears and insecurities, they can create a stronger foundation of trust and intimacy. One of the key elements of healing is forgiveness. Whether it's forgiving yourself for the ways you've reacted to emotional distance or forgiving your partner for withdrawing, letting go of resentment is essential to moving forward. Forgiveness allows both partners to release the emotional baggage that may be weighing down the relationship. It frees both individuals to engage with each other from a place of love rather than fear or past hurts. Healing also requires mutual support. Both partners need to be committed to creating a safe and supportive space where they can confront their emotions and work through their struggles together. This involves offering emotional support, validating each other's feelings, and being patient as each person processes their emotions. Healing is a joint effort that requires both partners to be open, honest, and compassionate. Ultimately, the path to healing is one of growth. It is about learning to love and support each other through the complexities of life and emotions. When both partners are dedicated to the healing process, the relationship can emerge stronger, more resilient, and more connected than ever before. In conclusion, emotional distance in a relationship does not always signal the end of love, but rather reflects the complexity of human emotions and the challenges we face in expressing them. When a man who loves you starts to withdraw emotionally, it is essential to understand the underlying causes behind his behavior. From fear of inadequacy to the inability to communicate vulnerable emotions, emotional withdrawal is often a sign of internal struggles that need to be addressed. With compassion, patience, and understanding, The journey to overcoming emotional distance in a relationship requires both partners to engage in self-reflection, vulnerability, and open communication. It is not an easy path, but it is one that can lead to deeper intimacy, greater trust, and stronger emotional connection. By acknowledging the fears and insecurities that drive emotional withdrawal, both partners can work together to create a space of healing and growth. Through emotional support, patience, and a commitment to growth, it is possible to rebuild a relationship even after emotional distance has taken hold. However, it requires both individuals to take responsibility for their emotional well-being and be willing to confront the issues that are creating distance. It is through this process of growth that a relationship can evolve into something more meaningful, supportive, and resilient. Ultimately, love is not about perfection, but about vulnerability, honesty, and a willingness to navigate the complexities of emotions together. When both partners are committed to understanding and supporting each other through their struggles, the relationship can deepen, becoming a source of mutual strength and healing. As you navigate emotional challenges in your relationship, remember that you are not alone in your experiences. Love is a journey that requires both partners to learn, grow, and adapt to the ever-changing dynamics of life. By embracing vulnerability and emotional honesty, you can build a relationship that thrives on mutual understanding, compassion, and support. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.